I'm on a wander through the Spiegel Garden here at Brighton Fringe. Just give you a little look. This is the Spiegel pub, and there is a, funny you call it, a real Spiegel tent here in the Spiegel Garden. Quite a famous one called Tivoli, which you'll see up at the Edinburgh Fringe as well. And you'll probably see here also a lot of posters of shows that are on. Here's the what's on of the Spiegel Garden in the Wunderbahn and the Spiegel tent. Literally going on for 100 shows happening throughout the Fringe. And this short video, I think I've recorded something a bit similar, but for those of you who might be new to Fringe completely, but for others that are more seasoned, I just wanted to reflect for a moment on what I'm calling the difference between fringe and fringe. And it's the same word, but I'm spelling one with a capital F and one with a small f. And the capital F here is because it's part of a name. This is called Brighton Fringe, where I am in my home city, and of course there's things like the Edinburgh Fringe and the Adelaide Fringe, and there might well be a fringe in your home city anywhere in the world. And capital Fringe is a capital letter Fringe is a brand. Brighton Fringe, capital B, capital F, is people are setting up fringes everywhere and they're giving it a name, and it's a business opportunity in some cases. In other cases it's an opportunity just to get lots and lots of people out. In this case, buying tickets for shows, just sitting in the sun. There's a pizza over there you can get, and you can get a burger somewhere else. There's street food aplenty in Edinburgh, and I have to admit it's not cheap. It's a big commercial festival, and you'll be in places like this that are fringe hubs. They become eating, drinking, entertaining houses. That's part of, in Edinburgh, 3,500 or more shows, and a lot of money passes between people and large corporations that run these venues. And if I sound grumpy about them, I'm only grumpy because sometimes I think of the confusion that is here then, and the almost silencing or the quietening down of what I've often called the real fringe spirit, and it's small f. And I've said elsewhere, and I don't know whether you agree, but I think fringe is absolutely vital to culture, because culture often becomes inaccessible when it becomes a mainstream. There's a main Brighton festival, for example, and though there is now community stuff going on, some of those ticket prices we're getting very, very high. You can go to the Brighton Dome year round and pay £50 to £100 for a ticket of a main act that comes, and that's as what entertainment always is. It goes into the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of pounds to go and see a West End show, particularly on its first night. And it means it's not accessible to the people on the fringe, the people who don't have that income. And that's what fringe was always about, is there are always fringes of society which can be based on income and accessibility. But fringe also can be the thing on the edge of a mainstream that pokes at it, that is a reaction to it, that can be sometimes a revolution against it, and it can wake up society, and it can shake mainstreams out of their mediocrity, out of their complacence. And that's what I love about the spirit of fringe. There can be fringes on the edges of science, and those centres of science don't like it. I've got memories of when I was seriously ill and had an autoimmune condition quite a few years back now, but asking my neurologist if, for example, there was any evidence that good gut health might be a way of preventing my condition, or at least reducing its risk or reducing recurrence. And I remember he looked at me and sort of smiled but said there's no real evidence for that. And so reality at the mainstream didn't have a great tolerance for fringe. And yet it was only a few years later that I remember receiving a newsletter that said that a study had shown that perhaps gut health was connected, and that's where antibodies could somehow be relating to bad gut health. And so diet suddenly becomes important, and there are studies looking into the relationship between diet, gut health and autoimmunity. That's what fringe is all about. Fringe sometimes gets proven to be the right thing later on. You can hear at the moment there are police going by, there is a march happening in our city, quite a political one, and sometimes they're called the fringe organisations, and they can be problematic for mainstream society. And yet without fringe, I don't think we ask important questions. We need fringe poets, not just mainstream poets. We need fringe theatre, and that's my small f, and I think it's vital. And there's just an origin story certainly in the world that the Edinburgh Fringe was once very, very small, even one venue that became just a few, and it was set up by comedians who wanted to create affordable, edgier comedy. You've heard of Monty Python, and you've heard of other alternative things like alternative comedy, and these have pushed the mainstream to maybe up their game. And of course the problem that we get is that fringe festivals by their very nature might grow and turn into mainstreams. Edinburgh Fringe Festival is hugely commercial, and it's actually bigger than the Edinburgh Festival now. The problem with that is that the very thing they were set up to do, which was fringe spirit, is they lose that spirit. They are no longer fringes. And though they would argue that in the Edinburgh Fringe there's lots of fringe theatre, it's true. Some of the models are unaffordable. They can become middle class places. In Edinburgh, lots and lots of, I'd say, working class people move out because they rent their houses and flats out because they can make so much money from it, and money they might well need. But they're then not in the very city for the Fringe Festival that they were there to help create. So we have a problem, we have a paradox, which is fringe becomes mainstream. But there's a problem that when the capital F almost becomes a trademarked name. So here in Brighton Fringe, in this big fringe hub, we don't know anymore, because they just don't have the money to advertise that there is a real fringe with a small f happening outside of this big venue. That people can come here and not know about it, and that those shows are asking really tough questions. They're doing experimental work. They're pushing, literally, because they're on the fringe, at the boundaries and the limits of what is acceptable. They're pushing at mediocrity. They're pushing at complacency. We need fringe. We need fringes on the edge of mainstreams to critique, to provoke, to disrupt. And it's at that moment, I believe, that we have a problem with big F and little f, because big F is louder, and big F can then be confused as the only F that's there. Capital F Fringe are now copyrighted, sometimes big brands. Fringe becomes a brand. Brighton Fringe is a brand, and the only danger of that is it no longer represents true fringe spirit, even though there might be some fringe shows within it. That's when you get alternative fringes to fringes. In Brighton, we've currently got the Brighton Independent Fringe Festival. Not quite sure what that is ever going to become. We've got Sweetfest doing its own thing with smaller shows in a fairly small venue. And you might agree, you might find edgier, not quite ready work, not funded work, but people are doing it anyway. Now that can be problematic too, because quite often fringe festivals are run by individuals who can sometimes dominate what that fringe is, and you kind of would imagine there's a free fringe spirit. In Edinburgh there is the free fringe, which was sometimes associated with more freedom, but also was a creative freedom, but what was also associated with the shows being free. But now on the way out of some free fringe festivals, it's almost like bouncers that won't let you out unless you pay £15 with your tap machine, with your credit card. And so there are even things happening in Edinburgh where there are fringes on the fringes of fringes, and the two fringes that are on the fringes might have a small f, but even they are now having logos and programs, and so fringe gets frozen out rather than being allowed to be on the true fringe and to celebrate. So I'm sitting here and just encouraging you. We're in Brighton Fringe, and you may love it, and we certainly go and review great work in the fringe, which may even be in this venue, might even be in that Spiegel tent over there. But you get a lot of commercial work here happening too. And the danger is that when the burgers are 15 quid, the drinks are 10 quid, or getting close to it, a coffee's close to a fiver, that only certain people can afford it, and yet it has the name Fringe in it. And it's not real fringe with that small f. It's not that spirit of accessible edginess. And so I encourage you, as I just reflected, to think about that.